Welcome back to the Gen Z Speaks podcast. With us today, as always, a very special guest. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sharayu Mahale.
What do you do?
And I'm an actor and dancer based in Los Angeles, California.
Are you originally from Los Angeles or?
No, home for me is Boston, actually. And then I went to college in New York. I was there for about 5 years. I was working out there, and then I moved here 7 years ago or so.
Nice. How's Boston?
Good. I mean, I say Boston, but I'm actually 30 minutes out of Boston. It's a smaller town called Ashland, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I like it. It's a nice suburban lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we say LA, and we're about 30 minutes from LA, so
Yeah.
same thing. There you go.
Is Boston really that racist?
So
That's
will
what I've
say
heard.
this. You're right. That a lot of people do say that, and I'm sure that if you lived in Boston, actually, like proper Boston, probably, and I'm sure I maybe experienced microaggressions that I didn't clock as microaggressions at that age. But I grew up in a very, very white area.
Okay.
At public school, and everybody was really surprisingly open and accepting. Like, I remember me and my friend used to do like a Bollywood dance at the talent show every year, and our senior year, like, we had like half our class was like doing it with us, so it was
really?
like
That's
people
cool.
were like really into it.
Yeah.
People like were very excited to learn and curious about it in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, the culture, that's dope.
So you were born and raised in Boston.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was New York comparatively to Boston?
Huge culture shock because it's so diverse, right?
Okay.
And so I went from this thing where like I was the only person that looked like me to now a space where there's so many people that are so diverse and like unique in their own ways, and everybody's really accepting of it, which was really cool to see. Like, I remember in like high school and stuff, like, we did not have anybody that was like openly queer or any like just it wasn't. And but then moving to New York, and everybody, especially NYU, everybody was like real open about everything, which was like a huge culture shock. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool to see people be so accepting
Like a
and
breath
open.
of fresh air.
Yeah.
And did you study acting at NYU or?
I wish. No. I actually went to NYU for business, so I was in the business school there.
Stern?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So I worked in a corporate setting for a couple of years before I decided to switch to acting.
What kind of corporate?
So I worked at a company called Nielsen, and basically they watch they measure what people watch and they correlate it with what people buy to see like how they can influence advertising patterns and whatnot.
Nielsen's the company that sends like those postcards to you, right? And they'll be like, hey, do you want to participate in such and such?
Yeah. Was your family a Nielsen family?
No, I actually, they called me like 3 times this last month.
Really?
And I was like, no, I don't want it, dude. And they're like, are you sure this is like a super special opportunity? I'm like, no, thank you.
That's so interesting because I know that so certain demographics as because the whole thing, the way they do it is they have a group of people across the U.S., right? That's supposed to be representative of all the demographics represented in the U.S. But certain demographics are obviously a little bit harder to get representation for various reasons. Like, if you were going to tell people like, hey, we want to like watch what you're watching on TV with you, people get a little sketched out by that.
Right.
And then even like we used to have, I remember, a hard time recruiting people in certain demographics where, let's say, English wasn't the first language. Because to them, it's a little sus, right? It's like, why are people like wanting to measure what I'm buying? How do I have anything to do with this? But so yeah, definitely we have like, I remember that used to be like a recurring conversation. It's like, how do we get more like Asian people to like be okay with us measuring what they're watching in certain senses? So they would, so the idea was like, how can we incentivize them to do it? Like, you can't incentivize them monetarily because then that would change their buying patterns. Like, we can't give them $500 a month because then they're maybe going to like change what they're buying or what they're watching with that additional
you can't
money.
influence in that way. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That sounds like a political campaign to me.
Yes.
How do we get the Asian vote? What do we do?
I mean,
what do we have to do?
I was like, I don't want to spread any misinformation. Just want to say PSA. That at least this was like back when I worked with them, that was like something that they were like actively thinking about.
What were some solutions? Just out of curiosity, or I don't know if you remember, but
I just think it was more kind of like a little bit in the branding or the marketing of it, of like, this is a really cool experience or opportunity for you to represent your community, or
just
like,
try to sell it harder.
And like maybe add a level of prestige to it too, right? Like, you are the chosen one, or like you're important. Like your vote matters. That kind of
Literally
messaging.
I was actually on
politics,
the phone with my dad, and I told the guy on the phone, I'm like, bro, I don't want it, basically, right? And he was like, anybody else in your family except babies? And I was like,
Except
you can
babies.
talk to my dad. And my dad's like, looked at me, he's like, I think my son really wants to do it. It's just he's playing hard to get. That's what he told the guy.
No
Oh,
way.
Yes,
man.
dude. We're in the
Our
car.
parents are our worst enemies sometimes.
Oh man.
And then look, I was like, are you fucking crazy, dude?
Oh my goodness.
And I took the phone back. I'm like, bro, I don't know what this guy's on, but no. And then I hung up.
And he called you again or what?
I think that was the last time.
That was the last
That was
time.
pretty like hard. Like no, you know.
Yeah, they're like not supposed to harass, obviously. So
Right.
they're-
So were you always interested in acting, or
Yeah.
how'd the business route come?
So I was always interested in acting, but I just genuinely didn't see people that looked like me on TV doing the thing that I wanted to do. So I was like, this isn't like a viable career path.
Yeah.
So I genuinely thought that, and which is why I never considered pursuing it earlier on. Like I remember the only Indian person I saw on TV was Kal Penn in the show House MD, or like Harold and Kumar.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is first of all a man, not a woman. So that again doesn't sell it in that way. So yeah. So I think I went through college being like, okay, maybe I'll do business in the entertainment realm so that I'm still, 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from it, but it's still in my life. And then I think somewhere along that journey, I was like, I think I'm still too many degrees of separation away from the thing that I actually want to do.
Yeah.
What if I just was the change that I wanted to see? Or what if I just did the thing that I wanted to do? So yeah. So then about 5 years ago, I made that switch to pursue acting full time.
Nice.
Was there a particular moment where you're like, I'm going all in? Or was it a compilation of moments and realizations?
It was definitely a compilation of moments. I think I just realized I was really unhappy with the way my life looked. And I was like, if I just continued doing this for the next 10 years, and I like died, I would just feel like I didn't do enough with my life. I didn't do anything. I didn't do any of the things that I set out to do. And so I was like, I guess something has to change, and it's not going to be an easy change, but yeah.
This is a really common theme. We've had comedians, actors on the podcast, and we all ask because nobody tends to have their degree in acting or like in film.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen, right? And then we have them on. It's like, why are you a stand-up comedian and a lawyer or like whatever it is? And they're like, I just didn't see it as viable. I didn't see people same answers. Like everything's like very
It's a
similar.
recurring theme.
Yeah.
And something before the podcast, we were talking about this. Like, yo, what is that one thing you really want to do before you die? You know, like if you were to die today, God forbid, like what is that one thing you'll always regret? And like everybody has answers to that change over the course of time and years. What is that for you right now?
I think after I made that pivot to pursue acting, I think I started adopting that mentality of, especially after the pandemic, right? Or during the pandemic, I was like, no, we literally could die today, right? And so would I have done the things that I wanted to? And I actually think, I feel like I have given this career my all, and I genuinely feel like I have done what I wanted to. Obviously, there's more things I could achieve with it. There's obviously like so many more milestones I could achieve. But in terms of like in my day-to-day of what is feasible to have done differently before I die, I genuinely feel like, nope, I've done everything I wanted to. Like, yeah.
Like taking action.
Like I've taken action towards all the things that I've wanted to do.
What does a day-to-day look like for somebody who's pursuing acting?
It varies so much, which is why I like it a lot. I think some people really thrive off of the stability of having a 9-to-5 with health benefits and 401k matching. But I think, which obviously is very aspirational for me too. But I think that the day-to-day is so different. Every week looks so different. Like if I'm doing a theater project for 4 months, then my day-to-day looks very different. I wake up, I'm in rehearsal for 8 to 10 hours, then I come home, I stretch, all that, and then take care of my body and voice and repeat the next day. So like if I'm doing a production actively, that's what that looks like. But if I'm on a film set, that looks very different. Like our call time for a film set could be 6 a.m. and then we're done at like 2 p.m. And then my day looks different. Or if I'm not actively working on a project, my day-to-day could just be like wake up, go to the gym, get a couple meetings in, do some event production stuff or other related stuff, social media content creation. And yeah, so it's like every day can genuinely look different.
Do you like that about the job, or do you wish it was more structured?
That is my favorite thing about the job.
Interesting.
And I know a lot of people that's really stressful or like anxiety inducing, but I think for me, that is what drove me crazy working in a corporate environment, was that my day-to-day looked so similar. Like it just felt
mundane.
Yeah. I think my friends and family all think of me as like a very optimistic and energetic and positive person, and spontaneous person. And working in a structured environment really kind of took all those fun parts of my personality out of it. And so this feels like a career path where that is celebrated. And yeah.
We've talked about this on the podcast, like our qualms with corporate America.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you're in settings in jobs where your boss is making you do just the same things over and over, and that doesn't leave you with a lot of room for creativity. And that inhibits your joy in whatever it is you're doing. Right? In acting, you can like try so many different things. I feel like if you're working on a project when you're acting, it can be similar if the director is just demanding you to keep doing the thing that he wants you to do and he's not receptive to you trying different things. So I think it also comes down to like what kind of a boss do you have and what kind of a work setting are you in?
Yeah, I definitely think on any film or TV project that I've been on, the director sets the tone and that is the make or break. In most situations, I think the director and then the producers obviously have an influence too, but I genuinely feel like if you have a director that is open and receptive to really collaborating, that's like
ideal.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? Because it's a creative scene. So why would you not want to express your creativity, right, in your acting position or whatever?
Right. Like I think as an actor, what you bring is your particular point of view to this character.
Right.
Like a director or writer has a specific vision for what they want, but they're also hiring the actor to help see like what other colors exist what other shades exist in this palette.
Yeah. How can you embody that character better, right? Because if you are the character, then you should be able to do it the best.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the best director you've ever worked for? Like you were like, wow, or has that happened yet?
Great question.
Or I think a better question is, like, what is that one time where you felt like the director empowered you to be the best actress of yourself? Right? Does that make more sense? I don't know.
Yeah. I can think of two examples. One was like when I was first starting out. Typically, like when actors are starting out, if you aren't a Nepo baby, you do a lot of student films or short films. And I remember there was one short film I did at Chapman University, and it was like a young undergrad director. And I just remember feeling like he was so cool with me just trying, like throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and just seeing what sticks. Like I took the character in so many different directions. He gave me as many takes as I wanted to. And I just felt really empowered from that project, feeling like, okay, like he really respected my point of view on this character. And that was really cool. I think more recently that was very early on. And I think even me as an actor, I think what I was bringing to the table was maybe not as sophisticated or polished. But I think now, more recently, like I did a feature film called Footnotes, and my friend was directing it. His name is Chris Leary, and he was also the director, producer, writer, lead actor in it, and so he was wearing a lot of different hats. But I think because of that, he was so in it and invested in it, and he had written the character kind of based off of my personality to some degree as well. So I think he really felt like, I trust you to do what you want with this character, and I trust that you'll give me a performance that makes the most sense. So that was really cool to see somebody like trust me on that level, even in the writing of it.
That's how it should be, I think.
Yeah.
Like I think a director, I've only performed in one thing. We wrote, directed, same thing. I mean, acted in it, produced everything. And in it, right, as we're directing it and we had like the other actors on set, it's literally walking them through like our character development process, and then letting them like fine tune it as it goes, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what definitely helped our characters build, right?
Yeah. I feel like when you write something and you have your own idea of it, when you cast somebody, you're giving the burden of finding that character to the actor, and then now it's on the actor to do whatever it is that they want, so long as they stay somewhere in the lines of what your original vision was.
Right. Like, I think the script definitely gives a solid framework for what this character should be, but then I think an actor makes the active choices to fill in that framework and paint it properly and add the right shading and whatnot.
What was it like acting when your scene partner is also directing as well? Was that like, how different was that from what you were usually used to?
So the way that he did it in this situation was he would still do all the scenes with me in real time, and then he would just go and watch the monitor after to be like, okay, this is what, if we were going to do it again, I want a little bit more of this emotion, or I think of this particular thing, etc. So in that sense, I mean, he was great at being able to juggle both, like being able to direct and act, and I don't think that's most director actors. That's a skill that you have to cultivate. I think he was really good at it, being able to be present in that moment as an actor. I know he definitely says he didn't feel that way or sometimes, but I think at least on the receiving end of that, I felt like, yeah, you're in the scene with me right now. You're not a director, you are an actor, and you'll tap out when we hit cut, but yeah.
That's so hard to juggle, those like two boundaries.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking of like so many things as a director that could go wrong. What if the sound was something like a car passing by? What if like I messed up on this one line and then like the lighting is off, and then you have to commit as an actor and do justice to your scene partner as well. It's very hard. Yeah.
I think that's why like a strong team, right? That's what we remember. I mean, that's what I learned, at least from the short film. We had a decent team on there, but like in order to make a truly strong short film, you need like a very strong team, right? I mean, you can direct and act at the same time, but you have to have a solid producer and at least, a solid AD to care about like sound quality or lighting and stuff like that.
Definitely. I think that was my biggest takeaway from doing this film. This was, a passion project of his, but he did it with a very small, lean crew. We only had, we had a producer, DP, and sound person, and then everybody else kind of filled in wherever we could. Nice. And that was my biggest takeaway. These were all friends of his that he was super tight with from undergrad. They had made movies together, so there was like an inherent trust in it. And because they were friends, they could they really were invested in no, this is our buddy's project. Like, we want to make sure we do the best version of this possible. Like, even if it takes an extra 5 minutes to find the best lighting for whatever, it's worth it. We'll do the overtime. It's fine. Let's do it.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned on just working on sets as behind the camera, in front of the camera, is you have to be comfortable with most of the people that you're working with. If you have the most talented group of people but none of you get along, it's very hard to make something that will be actually what you wanted to see on screen.
Have you experienced that?
When people don't get along? Oh, yeah. Especially in short films, I've experienced that. Because a lot of the things is you just need patience, especially as a director. Yeah. Too often, I think directors, a lot of them have no acting experience. Yeah. And so they have no idea what it's like to be, to be operating from an actor's point of view. And so from what I've seen, I think directors that do have acting experience tend to direct actors better, because it's they have a cheat code, right? Yeah. It's they know the game. They know sort of what you're experiencing, and it allows you to just deliver that part of the job description better, which is directing actors. I think that's half the game, directing actors.
100%. I feel like I can almost always tell when a director is also an actor, because it's the language they use is different. The vocabulary and how they are able to get performances out of actors is very different.
If you're an aspiring director, BSA, take an acting class. You can fail miserably. Who cares? You'll look like a fool, a clown. At least you'll have some experience, though.
At least you know, yeah.
At least you know the process.
Right.
Yeah. I went to USC, and a lot of kids who were in the production program took acting classes, and that just helped them be better directors. I saw that firsthand.
Really?
Yeah, I remember like sometimes at USC specifically, there's a class they have that's called directing actors or something to that
Directing
degree.
for actors, Annie DeSalvo, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember sometimes they would have actors come in just for the duration of the class to, you know, be like, how would you direct an actor? And like it was like an interactive example of it in the classroom. And I was like, this is really cool. Like I think there was one day where I kind of went in for one of those just to see what it's about. And that was really cool. Like as an actor, as like one of the actors that they had come in to work with.
So how that class works is it's called directing for screen, and they have a bunch of aspiring like production students, and they do like scenes from like popular movies,
Yeah.
and then they find actors, and then Annie DeSalvo is the teacher at USC. I think there's one other person, but she gives them advice on like what she would do to change, and at the end of the class they have to like film the actors as well. So yeah, it's a cool experience.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I have a question. Okay, so as an actress, when you're like maybe in a crying scene or you're in a depressed scene, how do you like decompress from that actress, like from that character?
How do you detach from it?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think a lot of actors have different ways of going about it. I think personally, anytime I'm working on a character, I always think about how is this character like me and how is this character different from me? And then I think after a scene, like an emotionally charged scene, I really try to focus on like, how is this character different from me? Because I think that is what helps me remember this is something that I'm playing and this is not just me actually. So yeah, just like thinking about like what is it about me specifically that makes me me, and just reminding myself of that. I'm also like a dancer, so I'm very physically active, and so I honestly think running on the treadmill is very helpful, just like physically getting it out of me. Yeah,
decompressing that. But like, so when you have to invoke tears, do you think of past trauma or experiences that have made you cry, like in your actual self, or how do you develop that?
How do you cry on demand?
Yeah.
Is what he's asking.
I cannot cry on demand. So, but I guess if I had to cry on demand, that would probably be something. I'd probably use a personal memory.
Yeah.
But I think normally for other situations where I do have to get emotional for a scene, I typically think about the specifics of the character that I'm working on, and like what is this like. What situation is this character in, and what is the lead up to it, right? A lot of times for film, we film out of order. It's not chronological. For theater, we get to do it in chronological order, so it's a little bit easier to get to the emotional point.
I see what you're saying.
Because you have the whole buildup of like 40 minutes to then reach the point. But for film and TV, sometimes you're just dropped into a scene, and it's like, okay, great, this is the climax, do it.
Figure it out, yep.
So I think for that, I really think about what has this character gone through so far, and I usually like my scripts are usually all annotated with like a bunch of different notes of what else has happened, what else, you know, what's in the background, the history of that character that would make this particular moment triggering, and really trying to focus on the character in that moment, in that environment.
I think that's a healthier method than taking a personal experience.
I mean, sometimes, I mean, you know, if that doesn't work and it's not getting me where I need to, then sometimes I might tap into like something more personal. Yeah. Like, what's bothering me on that particular day?
Right. I mean, I had one crying scene and it messed me up for the whole day. And like, after the film was shot and everything, I started thinking back and I'm like, a lot of actors and actresses must be like, because if you're constantly doing this, it messes with you. Like, it has to mess with you, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there has to be something about you that can handle it. I mean, it's a different hard.
What did you do to cry on demand?
I literally...
Because he actually did. He had tears coming down. It was first time ever crying on demand, and he did it. The man did it. We have,
Just took lots of personal experiences.
It sucks we can't use any of those Zoom shots because the lighting was off.
Yes. I was so pissed.
Oh my God.
They got no close-ups. First, I don't know how it happened, but...
Brutal.
Yeah.
We just didn't work out.
Yeah. But
What did you do? Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, I just took personal experiences and then just really try to hone in on them in the moment. and just act like it was just me. We're at a park basically, and I was just sitting there and just
It's a flashback scene.
yeah, flashback scene in a park basically, and in the movie is basically the chick took off on me basically, and that was in the moment, right? And I was basically trying not necessarily that in my personal life, but just take personal experience that really hurt me, and then. But obviously, you don't want to be reminded of past trauma. You know what I'm saying?
And also, it's like if you overuse that memory to make you cry, that memory is not going to continue making you cry.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is like something to be mindful of as well, right? Like a lot of people have said like, oh yeah, like when my grandparent or parent passed away, like I use that memory. But it's like, unfortunately, that might work the first like 10 times, but there might come a point in time where if you're using a personal experience, it's going to stop making you cry at that, or it's like you've already processed that trauma now, right? So if you
become numb.
Yeah.
Yeah. You become numb to the memory, and that's never a good thing either, especially if it's like a loved one passing away.
Yeah.
You don't want to become numb to that. Like,
right.
Yeah. It's a trip.
Right. Which is why I think it's like healthier to find a way to be that character and not have it be about your life. It's also like easier to create. Like I cry all the time in real life, meaning like I could be watching a TikTok and it'll make me cry. So I think
a TikTok can make you cry
all the time, man. If you those videos,
what?
Like my favorite genre of videos is like watching babies who have like a visual impairment get glasses for the first time and be able to see clearly.
That is emotional, right?
Oh, you know, gets me every time. So like I feel like my imagination is more powerful in making me emotional than, let's say, like a personal memory, because I probably already have worked through that trauma.
Interesting. Okay.
That's a really healthy way.
Yeah, that's healthy. Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes that doesn't work, and then it's like, okay, what made me cry in the last 24 hours? Let's bring it back. That's
smart. You go for more recent stuff, like day-to-day stuff, instead of like, you know, really deep stuff that's been bothering you for like maybe years or months.
I mean, it just depends what in that moment works, you know? We just gotta try everything and see what sticks.
Because I say that because some people literally, they like have those moments just like locked in. And they're like, I'm going to that moment when as a kid, this kid picked on me and made me cry. And every single time they're using that one.
Is that what you do?
That's not what I do. No kid has ever made me cry. I'm sorry. Like maybe alone, but not publicly. Thank God it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Maybe it'll happen.
Hey, things can change any day.
Maybe I'll get somebody to like heckle me.
What do you do?
Doing stand up. Well, I do the unhealthy way.
Unhealthy way.
I mean that's.
It's the easier way. That's a problem.
That is the easier way.
Yeah.
It's the easier way, which makes it the most like accessible. I think what you're describing takes training. And it takes, you have to be conscious of the fact that this is not you. This is another character that I'm building. Yeah. Yeah,
and I would say I definitely think it is probably easier to use a personal experience, but I think that is kind of the point of taking classes or training and creating a technique to go to get like a consistent result, right? Because I think that with acting, what gets you booked again and again is being consistent, being able to consistently deliver a good performance. And I have found that using my personal experience gets old quick. Like it was not sustainable for me. I think there's people that it could be sustainable, but for me specifically, it wasn't sustainable. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out how else can I tap into this like when I need it.
So you've created like a system basically for yourself. Like in this moment, I need to figure out how to do this way. In this moment, I need to do this kind of thing. Or not really?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah.
Because I guess every character you're playing is different, right? So I guess a system needs to be created for each character in a way.
Yeah, and I also think that different emotions require different things, right? Like I think personally, like anger comes real quick to me. Like that is something I don't like. I also think that emotions flow through me pretty quickly as well, right? Like I don't hold on to things for very long, which is something I've worked on over time. But I think anger is one of those things that feels more reactionary. So it's easier to come into that in the moment. But something like sorrow or grief is a little bit more lasting and requires a little bit more of a system.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, but there are times when even like sorrow or like grief can be fast, like can be a reactionary thing for me as well. It just depends on the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting, huh? Because I feel like even in real life, like sorrow naturally is a longer taking process. Like if you're sad, you're going to take that into like conversations too with your friends or your family. But I think if you actually maybe even anger too, because if I get angry, no, you know what? If I get angry on the freeway and I'm like cussing some guy out, I can go talk to like my family. Like my dad calls, I'll be like, "Fuck that guy," and then I'll just go into a normal conversation. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a reactionary thing. Yeah.
Or like a lot of times, right, where if you have like a breakdown, like you have a meltdown, let's say, that's probably a product of a compounding sadness, right? Like multiple events happened to make you get to the point where there's like snot running out of your nose, you know, like that kind of cry. But I can watch a TikTok and cry, and that's pretty reactionary, you know? So
I like what you said about how you look for differences when you were reading for a character or you were playing a character. You look for how they're different from you. Because a lot of people go for similarities. How is this person similar to me? Well, like, how much of myself can I embody in this character?
I definitely think the easiest entry point to building a character is how is this character similar to me? Because I think that is the most important thing is like, when you're playing a character is you can't have judgment for the character, no matter how quote unquote objectively negative this character is. You can't have judgment against the character in order to like play it fully.
Interesting.
So it is important to figure out how are we similar, right? It's like people bring up this example a lot in Hamlet or whatever, right? It's like if you were going to kill somebody or you were brought to the point where you were going to kill somebody, you can't enter that with the mindset of like, personally as Sharayu, I would never kill someone. I'm not going to kill anyone. But the idea being like, okay, but like, have you killed a fly before? Are there other things where it's like using that as like an entry point in, and then you can obviously create layers and dig deeper into that. But But
also realistically, like we don't know what we would do in that situation, right? And so it's like, don't pretend like you know yourself because you've never been in that position. Like I've been in positions where it's like, I didn't think I was going to do that. And I ended up doing maybe the not so great thing. So
killed somebody or what?
Possibly. Possibly.
That did not happen. What? Did it? No. Okay. I think something though that I have to ask you though is you've never judged a character you played ever. Like you don't judge personally. Like when you're reading something, you're like, what is this person thinking?
Well, I also think that is a muscle that I've been working on training for a very long time. I obviously, sometimes you might read something and be like, wow, that character is an asshole. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, okay. This guy's been swearing this whole time.
Okay. You know, obviously when you're reading something, you might have that thought, right? But I think if you were going to play that character, then you have to deconstruct, okay, but why is he behaving that way? What happened in his life to bring him to that point? I think about this even in my day-to-day interactions now, right? Where it's like very easy for me to find empathy because how many degrees of separation away are you really from anybody, right? Like I live in a part of town where there are a lot of homeless people or an unhoused population, and I really, even on days when it gets frustrating or it feels unsafe, right? I really do have to think about how many things would have to go wrong in my life to end up in that position, and it's like there's a finite number on that, right? Like there is a number of things, right? It's not like I could never be in that position. So training that as a muscle so that even in scripts when you're reading it, thinking about like, okay, how many degrees of separation away am I from this person? Like what would it take in my life for me to get to that point? And there's usually like a finite number. There's like a quantifiable, like you could get there.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking of things, like a degrees of separation to get to that point. I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Go for it. What were you saying?
Or I was just going to say,
don't censor yourself. It's a podcast.
But yeah, just like thinking about like positive and negative, right? Like who is somebody that you look up to? Like let's say Obama or whatever, right? Like what would it take?
You're speaking to the right guy.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I heard you say that in one of your past.
Sure.
Loves Obama.
Yeah, but
I
it's
don't know
like,
if I love him, but yeah.
but that's somebody that you or I look up to, right? And it's like, there's a finite number of steps that would get me to that point. And so, yeah. So positive or negative,
Yeah.
it could go.
A lot of people, like, when they discuss acting, this term comes up, method acting, right? Like, a lot of people have different definitions for method acting, which I think is interesting. What is that for you as an actress? How do you define method acting? And do you consider yourself to be a method actor?
I think there's so many different degrees of this, right? But I think probably most people are thinking, when they're thinking method acting, they're thinking of, to play a character, I need to be that character, even in my day-to-day life, to better understand what that feels like. So I think there's versions of that that are healthy and versions of that that are a little more unhealthy. Like, people bring up the Heath Ledger example with Joker all the time.
Yeah.
But I think personally, there's some degrees of that. Like, I've played some characters that were definitely a little bit more, let's say, stricter with their boundaries and a little bit more blunt. And I think sometimes I definitely have, like, played around with that, testing a little bit, seeing, like, okay, like, if I were to be a little harsher on this boundary, what would the person in front of me's reaction to me be like, right? So just informing or using that to inform how I would play this character on a micro level. Like, I usually, if I was going to do something like that, I would do it with not a close friend or family member, maybe somebody that I don't know particularly well, where I'm not as concerned about the lasting impacts of that.
So you have taken characters, like, you when you're playing a character, like, let's say you're ordering coffee somewhere, like, you'll be that character in front of when you're ordering coffee, or what?
Sometimes it's to be like, what would that feel like? Yeah, like, if I think something, I smile a lot, because I think a lot of times that's sort of my way of saying, like, hey, I'm approachable or whatever, right? But it's like, sometimes you play characters that are not. They're much more colder. They're a little bit more blunt, and that's not in their character. So, like, what would it be like to order coffee without smiling?
I see.
Something simple like that.
Yeah.
To, like, help give me, like, a touch point to an entryway of, like, how could I get into that character's mindset?
So when you do that, does it ever make you want to continue? Take it further from ordering a coffee?
I think there have been characters where I was like, how they handled that situation was impressive, and I would aspire to be like that. Right now, I'm like maybe only 40% of the way towards being that character, but I would like to get closer to 60%. I've definitely had moments like that where I have played a character and I was like, yeah, that would be, what a boss bitch. I'd love to be her.
Yeah. We had a comedian on the podcast, and he was talking about, he was like, I haven't done it yet, but I want to one day go on, do stand-up comedy as the character he's playing in the film that he's playing, but not tell anybody, right? Just do it, just to feel it.
Who's that?
What's that guy's
Armand?
name? No.
Kern?
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kern Meenan.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun exercise. I mean, that's what I like about being an actor as well, right? It's like, there's certain things that, or certain ways that I would never behave in real life, but I have the permission of the character on screen or on stage to behave in that way.
Why do you need permission to behave that way on the day-to-day? Whatever it is.
I mean, I just think that there are certain relationships or ways of moving about the world that I don't want to taint by moving in a certain way.
Okay. You don't want to taint a certain image kind of thing.
Certain image, yeah. I think part of maintaining relationships over time, whether it's friends or coworkers, right? There's a certain status quo that needs to kind of be maintained. Like, if all of a sudden I become somebody
that's not you.
Yeah, it's a little bit more
hey, keep them guessing, okay? Keep them guessing.
You become Harley Quinn with your, like.
Do you think it'll ever taint your mindset?
What?
Like pretending to be a certain way for, I guess, if you're method acting, right, and you're acting that way in real life.
Like, if she's playing a really demanding role,
exactly,
and you commit to the whole. Like,
do you feel like it would ever take over maybe your mental state?
I think I would probably not go past a certain point with method acting, right? It's like ordering a coffee is a great entry point. I don't need to continue it. Like, yeah, I don't need to be talking to my parents on the phone like that, you know?
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. I love doing stuff like that. Just like, I'm not even acting. I just love messing with people in different ways.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. So like, if I were to ever get like a really demanding role, I would start with my family first. My family gets the first. I get to analyze the character through the lens of my dad and my mom first, and my sisters, and then these guys.
But I think something that I also am like very cognizant of is that the reason I don't do it with family members or friends is because for me it's easy. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm tapping in, tapping out. But for somebody else, like, that could be a lasting impact on like, why did she talk to me
she
like
is
that?
crazy.
Yeah, it's like, did I upset her? Is there something wrong in the way we raised her? Like, I know that other people think about things or overanalyze or get anxious about it. I don't want to be the cause of somebody else's anxiety, you know?
Interesting.
That's a trip, huh?
We're dudes, so we don't think about any of this stuff.
Personally,
We're just like,
personally, I don't care. Accept it. That is your son. I'm your son.
You guys heard about this? I'm forgetting which actor specifically. Maybe you know. Was it Shia LaBeouf who killed a dog to prepare for a role, or was it Jared Leto?
I do not remember this.
For the Joker. It was, so there was an actor. Sorry, Shia, if I got you wrong, or Jared Leto, but there was one actor to get into a role. This actor, this is an actual thing, I'm very sure, 99% sure. An actor killed a dog to prepare for a character.
That's insane.
I don't know if he would have gotten away with that, but I'm curious. Actually, I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
I know you guys have been doing this podcast now for like 3 years, and do you ever worry or wonder how your views are going to age?
Our views are going to age. What do you mean views?
Oh, like opinions.
Yeah, like you guys talk about politics a lot.
Yeah,
you guys talk about religion and different things.
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder, like, in 20 years from now, what if I'm something completely different? Is this going to come back to haunt me? Or how do you deal with that? Yeah.
Matt, when you run for governor, are you going to be concerned about the podcast? It's a really good question.
Yeah, it is.
I think the purpose of our podcast, Gen Z Speaks, is to document how we feel at a particular given time per episode, right? And like, we're 23 and like our opinions are probably going to change on some things, right? But I'm mindful of it, but that doesn't prevent me from speaking what I really believe. Because I feel like
in the moment,
in the moment, because like when the thing about podcasting is once you start censoring yourself, like the conversation just is not as interesting, because people like podcasting because podcasters say things that we're thinking and they just say it out loud. And it's like, it's a moment, like, you know how you said you don't judge the character that you play on screen. Same thing with podcasting is like, we don't really judge each other for the things we might say in the moment, because like we're literally speaking things out loud. We're saying things as we think of them. Yeah. And sometimes we probably should filter ourselves, but like, you know, like more often than not, I think it's best to just really say how you believe in that moment and just be confident in that.
Just expect people to take it with a grain of salt, you know, when you do run for governor.
Yeah, when you do run.
Honestly, I agree with him to a certain extent. He says that sometimes maybe we should filter ourselves. I think we've had conversation. I think we should filter ourselves even less. Like, have no filter. And this is just my belief.
No filter.
No filter. I'm genuine. That's why I cuss. I'm just who I am. And I believe just in life in general, you should just be who you are. You should be your most authentic self. Even if you're an authentic self and people don't like that, they'll appreciate it more, in my opinion, and they'll respect it more than you pretending to be a certain way just to appease them in the moment or whatever it is. And personally, I don't worry about people's views of me in the moment or how it'll age in the future, just because it's me. You're only cancelable if you accept that cancel. Does that make sense?
Reverse cancel culture theory.
No, I genuinely...
reverse card.
Yeah. No, I genuinely believe, like, whatever it is, I feel like I'll say it. And if I change in 20 years, I'll say, hey, guys, I'm a human. Right? You guys change too. I guarantee if everybody's lives were documented, they're going to say stupid shit. They just are, right? And then eventually you're going to realize, hey, maybe I was immature, then I shouldn't have said that, right? And as long as you, in my opinion, as long as you own it, then it's okay. Maybe not okay, but it's tolerable, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's something that like as I grow older also I'm like exploring a little bit more, right? Like there's a difference between being liked and being respected, and not everyone that is respected is liked.
Yes.
And it's easy to be likable, but you could be not respected as a result, and vice versa.
Right.
Good point. Because
What's more important to you?
Well, I think that in my early 20s, definitely being liked was much more important. Because I always saw that as like, that's how I will get to the point that where I want to get to. But it's like the balance between what's the point of being well liked if you're not well respected?
Right.
And being well respected, oftentimes you are going to get haters along the way. There are going to be people that don't like you. And I think that was a tough pill to swallow, but I'm definitely closer to that now.
Nice. Good.
this is something we've talked about. It's hard to do it when you're young, but like you have to at a certain point, and I'm not there yet, but like you have to realize that not everything you believe in or you know are passionate about, not everybody's gonna like that. And
Right.
so like you have to be comfortable with that reality. Like every single thing that you do, more than like 75% of the people, they're not gonna like it in the world. And like that's okay, because as long as you're liking what you're doing, that's the most important thing, and you truly believe in it. Because if you go around trying to please like 100% of a demographic, that's impossible.
It's impossible.
Just impossible.
I was gonna say, I think content creation or like being on social media has taught me that in like the most obvious way, right? It's like you could post the most innocent video, like babies and dogs, right? And people are still gonna have negative comments about that. There's still people that will have a negative opinion. If any video of yours goes viral, there's always going to be some contingency that is anti-it and some that's pro-it. So it's like you just can't.
People love to hate. That's just what it is. People just love to hate. I mean, there's some guy on his freaking keyboard watching this podcast saying, it doesn't matter. That's the thing. It doesn't matter. Some of these people, it doesn't matter what you say. They'll just go against it, whether they believe in it or not, just because they're insecure about themselves, right? And that insecurity then portrays onto social media because it's easy. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys have been going strong for 3 years, so like you didn't let that hate get to you.
Oh man, it gets to me every day.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, we're not like huge, right? So we respond to like hate comments. Like I do it all the time. Yeah. I probably should not do it. Yeah. And like you'll be surprised. Like I'm just like reading these comments, and it's the most ridiculous stuff. Like people will comment about the table here. They'll comment about like the cricket ball here. They'll
not even that. They'll say some crazy stuff.
They'll say some crazy stuff. Like
one podcast, the guy was like the guy on the right talking about me. They were like,
oh yeah,
he hasn't come out of the closet yet. And I was like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, just like random stuff.
Yeah.
That thing is like they would never say that in real life. If
no.
they were sitting here watching,
No,
like nobody,
a
lot of people wouldn't say that. So it's interesting. Like, yeah,
it teaches you a lot about human nature too, right?
Yes.
Most people are just straight up. They're just pussies, right? And then
wait. Go ahead. Finish your thought there.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was thinking. Okay, so reading these hate comments made me feel like that was the case, but I disagree. Because if you look at just analytics, right? Let's say you make a video that gets 1.5 million views, and out of those 1.5 million views, you get 100,000 likes, and then 10,000 dislikes, and you get 50 comments that are really hateful. That means most people are liking your stuff.
Oh no! So
you know what I'm saying?
You're right. You're right.
You're talking about the people who hate.
I'm talking about the people that hate.
Yes, because I think most people are not haters.
No. Yeah, you're right.
Because most people don't comment on a video at all. If you look at the analytics, most people don't comment. Most people don't even like. Yeah. Because people just watch and they just pass by, and that's real life.
Yeah.
Like that's really real life, because nobody really cares.
100%.
People care. People are so. Everybody is just thinking about themselves. Yeah. Like nobody is actually thinking about you beyond the interaction. Yes. Yeah.
There's something I learned. I was in 4th grade. We went to Cancun. We're in this resort. And we're at a show, and the guy up there, he's bringing people on. Nobody's going up. And a recurring thing they kept saying, nobody knows you and nobody cares, right?
Yes.
That's just the truth. So,
I love to live by that. Like,
right?
no matter at what point, like when, like there's an actress, Priyanka Chopra. Like when Priyanka Chopra came to the U.S., nobody knew her, right? But it's like in India, she's like a big deal.
Yeah.
And a lot of Asia, she's a big deal. But like, even at that level, she had to come to a point where people like she was irrelevant.
Yeah.
And like figured it out. But the same. It's like nobody. You're never gonna. Yeah.
No, that's just the truth. I mean, good. I'm gonna step
Yeah,
back.
I was gonna be like, yo, what? Most people.
No, your clarifying was good because what I'm trying to say is, at least personally, the stuff I say on the podcast is the stuff I'll say in real life, and I naturally have like a very loud voice, and so even like if I'm at a dinner table, whatever, at dinner, I'll say things that I just feel, and sometimes people are like, relax, say it like say it low or whatever, but nobody ever says anything. That's what I've noticed. I've never had somebody at another table say, hey, you look whatever, right? It just doesn't
should come
happen.
out of the closet, Matt.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
one's ever said that.
I mean, it just never happens. That was my point. Clarifying.
Yeah. But like looking at the analytics, because the hate comments do get to you if you read all of them.
To me, they don't get to me. I don't care.
Some of them do get to me because I'm just annoyed more than anything. I'm like, bro, come on, like.
So then what?
It's literally
what happened. Like, what is the? I guess I'm trying to figure out what is the thought process to responding to them, as opposed to just letting it go.
Thought process?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Oh, it's just for the algorithm.
No,
the
but
more
what
engagement your post gets,
okay.
literally.
But what do you think about when you're responding to them? Like, you're
when
reading this comment.
Yeah. So the way I respond to these hate comments, by the way, I'm about to get one right now. Like as I'm speaking, we'll post this as a clip. But I usually respond with love and affection. Like I'll probably like in a very friendly way try to roast myself and acknowledge something they pointed out,
something
because
self-deprecating.
Exactly. And that lowers the ice. And I've converted some of these haters into followers, like on our TikTok. Yeah, like a couple people. This one, at least from my stand-up account, like some guy like said, oh, like work on this or whatever, and I responded to him. And then he got his other friend to follow my account just because I responded to him. I heard what he had to say, acknowledged it, made fun of myself, and then just I figured things out from there. But yeah, like I just respond with love and affection. And I'm like, because like there's probably something wrong in their lives, like they're saying these hateful things.
Something that you said triggered or brought up an emotion that maybe they had suppressed or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or they haven't come to terms with yet.
I just humanize them and like,
Ibrahim turning Ibrahim haters into Ibrahim fans.
There you go. That's what you got to do.
One follow at a time.
There you go, yeah.
But it's not healthy to read all the comments, so definitely.
No, it's not healthy.
Joe Rogan always
Rogan's
says
right,
he's right about that.
Yeah, Joe's right.
But he can say that. The dude has like 500, he got like a $500 million contract from Spotify. He is the podcasting king.
No, 250 mil.
250.
Yeah,
okay, sorry, $250 million.
Get it right, bro.
For talking. What is he doing? What are we doing? We're just talking to people.
Yeah. He's Joe Rogan, bro. One thing you have to respect about Joe Rogan is like his cohesiveness in conversation and his ability to like bring up new conversations really well.
He retains information.
Retention, yeah, it's really good.
What do you guys think is what do you guys think needs to happen to get this podcast to like that level? Like, or like, what is the iteration? Like, you guys have been doing this for 3 years, so I feel like most people start a podcast and like 5 episodes and they're like, this is a lot more demanding than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. But you guys have been going strong for 3 years, so I'm curious, like, what are your goals with this, and like, what needs to change or happen to get there?
Okay, so for like you're right, 90% of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes, right? So we struggled with this majorly.
90s. I mean, that's a high. Like that's high
percentage. That's a high percentage. So we really struggled with this in the beginning. Like we started on Zoom, right? And it was captivating. We wanted to do something. We had started. We talked about this a little bit, but we started a YouTube channel. Did a few episodes. It wasn't much, and then the podcasting kind of like captivated our attention. And what we realized is, by going on Zoom, in hindsight at least, by going on Zoom, it wasn't ideal for us, but we just didn't have a location to set up in person, right? And so doing something was better than doing nothing.
But also a podcast is like audio, so it doesn't really...
You're right, it is audio, but what we realized is YouTube kind of converts them into the audio formats, right? So if they see us and they see our clips and they're interested, maybe they'll look us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And so in my opinion, like at least the Zoom, what it did for us was it kept us going a little bit. Like this can be a possibility. We can keep this stream alive. And I think the first step was our whole time we were like, we need a studio. We need not even a studio. We need somewhere to just be quiet and like film. Right. And so God willing, like I got the warehouse, right? And so we were able to set up a studio inside the room. And I think now we've been structuring things. So now that we have like a back end guy, we create jobs for each of us. So we've created processes and procedures. And now what we're doing now that we're comfortable with the processes and procedures of the podcast and clips and all that, it's doubling down on what's working. And we understand this can be a 5-year game, 10-year game, right? But it's just, in my opinion, it's just doubling down and then staying consistent. My biggest thing is consistency. Like it sometimes. it's difficult, right? Because he's the one that posts. Like, I chop up the clips, Russell edits the clips, and then he posts the clips. And some days, like our days as individuals, they get hectic. Especially like we're not getting paid for this at all, right? And so you take your job as your priority, or whatever it is, family time as priority. But if we view this as our job, like this is our investment, right here, right? And if we take that as like to heart, then, you know, if he misses posting, I'll post. Like last night, he was busy, so I posted, right? And so like it's just teamwork, cohesion, and then doubling down. Yeah.
We started, by the way, in like 2019, and we were in college, and we like posted 2 podcasts.
Freshman year. Yeah.
The second was the meaning of life. That was our podcast theme. We just talked about the meaning and purpose of life as 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then we stopped, and we picked it back again in 2021. We did like 30 episodes on Zoom, and we're interviewing. The title of the podcast was Gen Z Speaks, as it still is.
Yeah.
But we're interviewing like old people the entire time. The youngest podcast guest on our Zoom podcast was maybe like 45.
No.
Who was? Oh,
Lath.
it's that guy. Lath. Lath was the youngest.
26.
Lath was the youngest.
Well, okay, we had one guest though. That
yeah,
was
it
like
was
in his
one
20s.
guest.
Yeah,
Everybody else was older.
Right.
And yeah, this is the first time though. We started this year, 2024, March, where we're doing the podcast in person.
Yeah.
And we've done like, thank God, like what, 30 episodes now?
30 episodes.
Yeah.
Now.
So that's, I think, just doing it in person. And our format has changed too. When we're doing the podcast on Zoom, we were talking about business, technology, and politics.
Yeah.
And so it was very like formal. It felt like it was like 3 nerds talking about a bunch of stuff. And now it's just like, we just interview the guest, we do the podcast amongst ourselves, and we talk about whatever comes up. And obviously we do research beforehand on issues and people, but for the most part it's less structured. Yeah.
Way less structured. And to me, that was kind of the drag too of the pod on Zoom. And the reason we did politics, tech, and business, because he's politics, Jenish, or the man who may not be named, actually, sorry.
Yeah.
Our friend, but he's a
co-host,
co-host. He's tech, and then I'd be business.
Former friend, is that what I heard?
Former friend.
I'm kidding.
Former
He's our
Jenu.
Stir the pot.
We just went on a trip. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we just went to Costa Rica last week. Yeah. But yeah, and then we just, now that we're doing it in person, we realized the flaws in what we were doing, and I think it's been more fun now. I'm having a lot more fun, and I think we get to experience our personalities a lot better. And I think people fall in love with your personality rather than maybe your actual conversation topics.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense to me.
I think it connects back to, acting, because I feel like in the beginning, you kind of do stuff that people are telling you to do. Like you watch like actors and like you try to mimic their process, or like you take classes and you try to like, do the things the teachers tells you to do. And the more experience you get, the more comfortable you get in your own skin. And like, I feel like we're finally getting to a point with podcasting where we feel comfortable in our own skins, and that helps us stick with it. But do you think you're at a point where as an actor, you feel comfortable in your skin when you're acting, and like you've kind of self-actualized? It's a very deep question, but yeah. Have you self-actualized?
Definitely not. I'm still taking classes. I still definitely I'm still working on challenging myself in different ways. I just think that the bar keeps up, like, increasing. But I think that is definitely still an ongoing iterative process for sure.
The more classes you take and like the more exposure you're getting, is there a realization that there is no process or like procedure? It's like it's what you make out of it, kind of.
I think definitely through just life in general. I think you learn a lot about everybody. In like natural personality gravitates towards certain things and doesn't, right? And so everybody is going to have a different process or way of operating through life, and no one way is necessarily better than the other. Everybody's kind of by a certain age has made their peace with certain things. I think with acting also, it's like, I mean, everybody's got something different going on, and I think that like I've still working on the process.
Yeah.
It takes a long time.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
A very good actor once told me, I'll just say Mahershala Ali once told me, a great actor, he said it takes 20 years to like really master acting. He said it takes 20 years. Same thing, the guy who was in Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy, he said the same thing. He said it takes decades to really master acting. And I think that, And I really think there's a very close association with feeling comfortable in your own skin and mastering acting, because I feel like they go hand in hand.
I think so. I think, yeah, definitely feeling comfortable in your own skin as like you as the individual is a big part of it, right? Because then you're not thinking about your insecurities when you're like watching playback on a scene. Like I think you can always tell, like in the beginning, a lot of actors, when they see themselves, a lot of times directors won't even show, like after a take, they won't show actors the playback on the screen to be like how that take went, because they know that, especially earlier on, actors are like, oh man, that like pimple on my face, or like people like fixate on, are like, oh, she's not really likable, but it's like, okay, but maybe that character is unlikable. It's not you, it's the character, right? So I think in the beginning, a lot of times, that is like the biggest learning curve for a lot of people, is figuring out like, okay, how do I disassociate from that piece of the puzzle? Like, how do I not judge myself? And that kind of comes with like, okay, accepting who you are and getting comfortable in your own skin to get to that point. And then also getting comfortable with like, everybody has made their life choices according to their past experience and life and background and upbringing and history. And they're at peace with it. Like, it's not your job to change it. All you can do is accept it, like without judgment.
Do you like watching playback? For playback, for people who don't know, playback basically means like you do a scene, you go back to a monitor, and you can look at the scene.
Right. And then I find it very helpful, right? Because I think I'm also a photographer, so I'm used to being behind the camera as well. And so I think I can objectively watch playback a little bit and say, oh, okay, like without thinking about like, oh, my hair looks kind of funky or whatever, but really thinking about, oh, that came off as a little bit more like the intention didn't read, like what I thought I was playing didn't come across in the playback. So what do I need to change in my process to make sure that this take is different, the next take is different?
Right.
So I find it helpful to watch playback. I know a lot of actors who are like, definitely don't want to see it. I trust the director, you tell me what to do.
Well, some directors don't let you do it. I did a short film at USC, and this director would not let me see playback. I tried. I was like, "Are you gonna tell me no?" I was like, "I'm an alpha male, bro. What are you gonna? Alpha male?" I obviously, didn't do it to that extent, but I was like, "Bro, like, it's not that deep." But he was like, "No playback." So he did not let me watch playback at all.
Yes.
No, none of the actors were allowed to watch.
Yeah, because some actors do really get in their head about it. I've seen it happen, which is why I'm like, I understand why some directors don't let actors do that. Because I've seen some actors get in their head about it and like really, really fixate on things. And then I think sometimes if you are fixating on what you think needs to happen, then you disregard what the director is telling you. And I think that is probably what that director was trying to hedge for.
But completely banning like an abolishment. Because the thing is, I think it's also because it's a short film. He's probably thinking, these are newer actors. They might get in their heads. But for someone who's experienced like you, like, how would you deal with that situation if a director is like no playback at all, zero?
I've definitely been in those situations, and I'm like, okay, I respect that process, because then it's like, okay, that means that what that director is asking of me is that he wants me to trust him and his process and his vision. So maybe there's something that I'm doing that is coming across as me asking to watch playback is being interpreted as me not trusting his process or her process, right? So just like reframing it. But yeah, sometimes that's the situation, and you kind of roll with the punches.
Was he a new director?
Well, he was a student.
So
yeah.
So then that was kind of like irrelevant, right? These are newer actors, like acting like.
I don't know if he thinks like if he's operating from a standpoint of like Martin Scorsese or something. I don't know. Like he's like, I'm the Martin of this ship. No. But do you have a dream director you'd want to work for? Or do you think like that, or is it mostly just projects that you like to do or characters you like to play?
There's not like a director in particular that I am, open to, because I genuinely have found that like it's about finding the right team, and like maybe this person that I really want to work with and I won't click, or our working styles will be different. So I think about it less in that term, but I do definitely have certain genres or roles or characters that I haven't gotten to play yet that I would love to, or things like that.
What is your favorite genre?
I love ensemble cast comedies, like specifically like women ensemble casts. Like there's a show called We Are Lady Parts. There's another show called Dairy Girls. It's basically like We Are Lady Parts is basically this group of hijabi Muslim girls start a punk rock band.
No, shoot.
It's so
I've heard of this.
good. Yeah, Nida Mansour. It's like I think it's a British show, and it's on NBC. Like something like that, right? Where it's like you have a group of really funny girls just being themselves. Yeah. Like that would be like ideal. Or even the show Dairy Girls, I think is so funny.
Oh, that's cool.
I'd love to do like an ensemble cast comedy.
How do you aspire as an actor? Do you aspire for like better characters, better projects, or how does that work for you? Because a lot of actors, I'll tell you this from in my conversations, they aspire, like these young actors, they aspire for their Oscar moment. Like a lot of actors I met, they already have their Oscar speech written out. They already have the speech written out, bro. Yeah, like okay, not a lot, maybe, but I've met like more than 2 people. I should specify who have like their Oscar speech written out. They think of the moment they're gonna be on that stage, thanking their friends, family, significant other. Yeah, and like people believe in that as a form of achieving what they want to do. Some people call it manifestation. Some people call it, I don't know, like just
arrogance,
or like just being mindful of what they want to accomplish and just reminding themselves that that's the ultimate destination. But for you, what is that like? Do you aspire? Obviously, everybody aspires for those big moments, but like, do you aspire to work with like specific people or projects, or is it even a good thing to aspire for better characters?
I think defining that is like I think the trickiest part. I also think that I just like objectively know the playing field looks different being a minority in a predominantly white space, right? Like I think there are currently maybe certain caps or ceilings on what is achievable realistically and whatnot. So I think for me it may not be like an Oscar is not the pinnacle of success for me per se, but I think that, just being part of meaningful storytelling, and that can look different, right? Like, I think some of the most meaningful projects maybe don't have as many eyeballs on them, right? Like, I think about like the Indian film industry a lot, like Bollywood, right? Some of the best films were like these art house films that didn't have commercial success in a way. So I think like I would still feel like I am progressing as an actor if each script I got said something more and more meaningful or unique. That doesn't necessarily budget related or isn't necessarily, sometimes it is obviously, but like, I think like A24 example of like films that say something or make you think or have started like a cultural revolution or of some sort, right? Yeah. Like changing the way we think. I think that is much more important than some of these other like awards or accolades, which carry weight but operate in a system that wasn't necessarily designed for people like me to thrive in or optimize.
It's more about the passion than the glory, right? Yeah,
I think so. And it's like also like, why are you doing the thing that you're doing? Is it like for the fame and the glory, or is it because something about this craft, personally, I feel like I've become a better person in the last 5 years as I continue to explore what the meaning of the word empathy is. Because I think as an actor, that's the most important thing, is to have empathy or sympathy for different people and walks of life. And that's made me a better person. And so I think that is the most important part of the puzzle, at least right now. That might change, but as of right now, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Like, I think if you are you're just dedicated to your craft, naturally the accolades will come, right? So that's not something to, like, in my opinion, glorify. Some people, maybe they want to write their Oscar speech, or there's a lot of businessmen out there that they had nothing and they went to Rolls Royce and they like test drove the Rolls Royce because they wanted to feel like, right, Dan Pena, right? Like these guys do this type of stuff. It just, to me, it's very it's not so humble. You know what I'm saying? You're not doing it for the right reasons per se.
I also think the more that you're in the industry, the more you also realize how much of everything is so related to like PR and publicity. Like a lot of times Oscars films have a big PR budget, marketing budget behind them, right? So it's like you're seeing all this imagery, you're seeing this talk, you're seeing this buzz, but a lot of it is manufactured, right? Yeah. It's like you pay different publicists or PR companies to promote your film and get it in front of more eyeballs. And sometimes it's not the best film that wins, there might have been other films that were quote unquote better or had more meaningful messages behind them, but they didn't have like the marketing budget behind it to get like viewership and word of mouth to spread and create this buzz about it. So
yeah, happens often.
Creating the buzz is hard though.
It's hard
with any film.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things. Because there's a lot of great films out there, and people have not seen.
Exactly.
Like so many great films.
And there's a lot of shitty films out there that lots of people have seen.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely, because they probably had the marketing budget behind it.
Exactly. I mean, you see all these movies like on personally, I don't care for Blumhouse, but they're always on social media, Blumhouse films, right? And they're always on trailers, and I'll end up going to watch some of these, but after a certain point, I realize I'm like, why am I doing, like, what am I watching this for? Just because I seen it on like Instagram?
But it works. It got you to buy that movie ticket.
Yeah, they still made their money off of you. Exactly.
Yeah, but it's not long lasting. Is another point of mine. It's not long lasting because now I've realized like, okay, this production doesn't create quality films, and so I'm probably not, even if it is a good movie, right? I'm probably not gonna go watch it just because of that preconceived notion. Yeah.
Well, Blumhouse also makes like more scary films.
Scary, yeah.
You don't like that.
No, but they're just not good. I've seen good quality.
He's scared. He gets scared easily. Me too, but this guy more so than
I'm
me.
scared of ghosts. I don't like ghost stuff.
Have you ever had a ghost encounter?
Oh Lord.
Oh yes. Let's.
You're opening up Pandora's box. Please don't.
have.
He believes in ghosts. He believes that something happened to him recently that indicates that there was a ghost in his house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No, but I'm always of the mindset like, hey, anything can change. Like maybe I'll have an experience. Like I'm not religious, but like maybe I'll have an experience where I suddenly turn to religion. Who knows? You know, anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
A couple degrees of separation.
I'll tell my ghost story. Well, real quick, Russ, could you move the charger that's connected to the phone over the chair? Because it's like it's being hit. Yeah. Okay. So recently my dad was extending like the house out, right? And so we're there, 3 of us are there, his girlfriend, my dad, and then me, and we're talking about it. And my dad and his girlfriend, they have like, one's a 2-year-old, so Mia, and then another is 8 months now. And okay, we're right there talking like about how it's gonna look or whatever, and the construction's being done, and all of a sudden Mia calls me Guy, like that's her nickname for me. And so I hear Guy. And I kind of ignore it because it's coming from her room, and I'm talking to them. And then I hear it again, and so naturally I'll turn and I'm going to walk to her, see what she wants. And my dad's girlfriend's like, Matt, where are you going? And I'm like, Mia's calling me. And she's like, yeah, but she's right here. And she was on the couch, literally to the left of me, sleeping.
Oh.
Okay, Miley is in their bedroom, sleeping, or just in their bedrooms, right? So opposite side of the house, we hear, and I'm like, you guys heard that though, right? And Jess was like, yeah, who was? Oh, sorry, that's how it started. Not where are you going? She was like, who was that? And I was like, Mia's calling me. And she was like, no, Mia's right here. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I look at my dad, because my dad's a firm disbeliever, and he's like, I heard that. And I'm like, he's like, Miley is in her room, so that can't be the case. But yeah, that's the story. Nothing has happened.
Do you believe in ghosts now? Did he convert you?
I'm 1 degree closer now.
I mean, the weird thing is, like, I understand, like, if I heard it, maybe I'm mishearing or something, but all 3 of us heard it. And, like, my dad always tries to create, because there's been other incidents that aren't as obvious that have happened. He'll create some, like, try to create some logical, like, explanation, and this was the only thing, like, he didn't know what to say. So I'm like,
so
okay.
him also.
Yeah, he's not saying. I'm like, okay, something fucking happened, and I'm kind of scared now.
That's pretty scary, regardless if there is a voice or somebody in the house, you know.
Yeah. In the Hispanic culture, they call them dueños, which is basically, it's like a leprechaun-like figure that targets children, apparently.
Oh.
Yes, and so like they'll encapsulate a voice. And they're saying that the dueño is targeting me. And I don't know if I believe in the dueño.
As a young child.
Yeah, exactly.
As a young child.
As a young child, calling me Guy, which is like, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I think it's fake. I think you just made it up.
I probably did. I probably dreamt it. All 3 of us.
Yeah, just hallucinating.
All 3 of us, our dreams kind of like synced.
At the same time?
Yeah, at the same time.
So you mentioned you did a movie called Footnotes. It was an independent film.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like working in an indie budget? Because it's very, like you said, lean crew. It's very like, you don't have like a $500 million budget where you can play around. There's room for error. Like, you really have to be on point and do justice to the budget, because that's the only option. So what was that like?
I mean, it was really fun. I think because it was just a group of friends. Like, I was also friends with all the other team members and stuff. So it was just really fun. It was friends making making a really cool movie. Everybody was so passionate about it. And I think it's very rare that you get to experience an environment like that. I've been on a couple of high budget productions, like TV shows for like small couple lines here and there type of roles. And it's so fascinating. It's like, it's a well-oiled machine and they have a ton of money to pay every rung of the totem pole, right? But it's like, it's not always that people are super passionate about it, right? They're clocking in for the paycheck. So it's a very different environment and a very different motivation to be leading from, or like a different intention to be leading or operating from. So Footnotes was really cool because everybody was there and truly invested in the project.
That's amazing.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. They didn't care about the time of day it was or whatever, right? They were just like, let's make this happen.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's 4 a.m., but we still have a scene to get through. Let's do it.
You had a scene at 4 a.m.?
We definitely had some late night. We had there's one scene where we're tripping acid, and we had to film it at night, obviously, and so it was pretty late by the time we wrapped that.
Yeah.
But nobody cut any corners, and I was shocked. Everybody was tired, but everybody was we want this. We have one shot to do it. Let's get it done.
That's amazing. Yeah. I feel like...
Sorry, not acid, mushrooms. I should have said that.
Mushrooms.
Sorry, either way.
Same difference.
Same thing. I don't know.
Important distinction. Those drugs react differently, no?
Did you commit to the role by, doing justice to that scene, or how did that work?
So straight edge, unfortunately. I honestly feel I think when I turn 80, I'm going to just do all the drugs. But until then, my body's a temple. So that one, I just imagine what that would be like. I talked to a bunch of people. A lot of my friends that are actors or have a little couple years ahead of me are like, dude, you should really trip some acid. I feel like it would change the way you think, and I think it would make you a better actor. And I was like, I feel like there's different ways to become a better actor, but...
Agreed, yeah. We've never done it, so we don't know what it's like, but...
We're kind of similar in that way. We don't... Not them, so...
Yeah. No drugs.
He's a little bit of an alcoholic, but...
I am not an alcoholic.
No,
I've never had alcohol.
Your 20s and 4.
No, we don't drink.
What was the biggest lesson you learned from this film?
Going back to teamwork, start assembling your team earlier than you think you're going to need it. If, let's say, I have the aspirations of someday in my life, I want to direct a feature film, I should be thinking about that now, right? Who do I want in my pocket, in my sphere? Who would be good at producing, at set decorating, at costume design, etc., right? Who knows if that time will come or not, right? Mm-hmm. But just thinking about building your team of who are the people you trust, whose creative visions you trust, who you want to be working with. I think having seen Chris go through that process, just through his life, cultivating those friendships and relationships over time, and other filmmakers that I respect as well. I did a musical called Monsoon Wedding with the filmmaker Mira Nair. And
great filmmaker.
Yeah. And so even her, watching oh, she works with a lot of the same people again and again. Why is that? And then realizing, oh yeah, it's because she trusts their vision. They've worked together, and she's cultivated that relationship over time. So even if you don't necessarily think you're going to work with that producer now, but you see the future of this is a great working relationship, I want to protect that and build that relationship for if we do ever find the project to collaborate on.
Is there a project in mind?
No, I don't have any project like that in mind. I am not a writer per se, but I hope that someday in life I will have the financial means to produce a project and be be involved in that capacity as well.
Nice.
One thing I've realized in Hollywood is it's all relationships. You can be the most talented person, but if you don't know how to make a relationship with somebody, if you don't understand just social dynamics, it's just very hard to get by.
Yeah, and I think the thing where people kind of get tripped up a little is you may not see a one-to-one result right away, right? You may not be like, hey, I met so and so at Sundance, and then the next day they offered me a movie. It might be like, hey, I met this person at Sundance, we got coffee a couple times, and then a year later they like pitched me when they were producing a project to somebody else, and that didn't go through. But then the year after, they were doing another passion project, and that was a fully funded feature film that they pitched me for, and that time it clicked. Like, you never know how and when those relationships are going to blossom, so don't stop watering it if it doesn't blossom right away. I think, just being mindful of like, who are the people in your pocket and how do you want to cultivate those relationships over time.
Really important, right? Cultivating a team. And then, we've seen that a lot. I mean, I think Adam Sandler's team is kind of one of the biggest things. They kind of do every movie together, and it works, right?
Yeah.
It works. I mean, every movie's a hit. Yeah.
I think the lens that I've looked at, a lot of people give me different advice on this, and my like method is I just want to be friends with people that I think are cool and interesting, and I think if you do that, that's a little discriminatory. Nah, like I want to be friends with people that I vibe with. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time, the people I vibe with are pretty cool. So like, you know,
Yeah,
it's
so
a
there's
testament to my coolness. But no, but I think, you know, like it's important to just be friends with people that you really like, and if you like them, you know, like things will blossom out of that.
Yeah, like I definitely it's like if you vibe with somebody, then chances are they may not like, maybe you're looking for a set decorator, right? And that may not be their job profile, but if you know like, hey, so and so is really detail oriented, is very creative, enjoys decorating their apartment, interior decoration, right? Like, could that be a translatable skill, even if that's not what their resume says or whatever?
Yeah, you have to be good at knowing what things people are good at. Like, you know, on a set, you can tell that. You can be like, oh, this guy's good at this or that. Yeah.
I think in life, you can tell, like, a lot of people want to do a certain thing, but maybe aren't necessarily even good at it, right? And so maybe I always hear, at least, just play to your strengths, and then when you play to your strengths, things will work out.
Yeah, like I think I spent a lot of time when I was a little younger trying to trying to strengthen my weaknesses. But sometimes I feel like that is maybe not the best use of my time. Obviously some things, you know, but I actually think it's probably smarter to lean into your strengths. If like I, for example, the longest time was like, man, I hate that I require like it's so much easier for me to get something done if I'm going to be accountable to somebody else for it. Like I was like, I want to have that internal accountability, which I obviously am working on in general, but sometimes it's like, okay, like if I know to build discipline, it's going to take me creating a daily vlog, documenting that I did that thing, then like fine, lean into that. Make that choice.
Yeah.
I think
double down onto it.
Double down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something like my dad, he's like my mentor just in general. He like with this business, at least, like what he's always taught me, whether it's business or this podcast, whatever it is, there's things that you're just naturally good at, and he's like, spend 90% of your time making those things that you're good at even better, because the things that aren't so good, I mean, it can only cost you 10%, right? If you focus 90% of your time on the things that are good. And he's like, and oftentimes if you focus on those things that are bad, the things that are good are going to start dwindling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the exponential growth you could have had you invested that time and resources into the positives.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
100%. That's what it takes.
But sometimes people are not good at anything, and that's
no,
okay.
that's not true.
But they're not good at most things. Like me, like for instance, like I'll be honest, like I'm not good at most things, but I'm good at a handful of things. And once you have to realize what is that one. You're right, because there are people that are good at least something, but it takes time to find that something. But that doesn't mean
it takes time for the person to figure that out. But other people
can see that.
And so I think the solution is being adaptable and being a sponge. Because if you can listen to other people and realize somebody sees something in me, maybe I should double down.
Yeah, but my point was like, I feel like a lot of people just quit at things because they think they're not good at it, and that's like, it just takes time, right? Like stand-up comedy. There's very few people that I've seen are just naturally funny and that can translate on stage. And so it's a muscle that you have to work, and there's no shortcut to it. Like, you got to put in 5-7 years, right? Like, it's very rare that you see somebody that just didn't do a bunch of open mics and bombed and became what they became.
But why does it take 5 to 7 years, do you think?
just it's like a sport, bro. You know, like when you play basketball, you start with, you know, playing club basketball, you play for your high school, you play college, then you go to the NBA, or and sometimes you play G League. It just takes you have there's
to develop the skill, you're saying. So
yeah, there's
but
no
you're saying
shortcut.
5 to 7 years is to develop the skill.
I'm not saying for everything. I'm just saying for stand up at least. You know,
I
like
think
it
for
takes,
stand up, to me, what makes sense is you have to be seen, right? And in order to
Yeah.
be seen, you have to be out there more. And so the time it takes to be seen is
if you're
more.
good, eventually you'll
Yeah.
be seen. But like I'm just saying, with in general, with anything you're not good at,
Yeah.
it just takes time, right? Like how long did it take for you to feel like you were you reached a point where you were like, okay, I made something, I acted in something where I'm really proud of it, and like this is you know, I did my thing.
I mean, I feel like every time I watch something, I am still critical of it. So,
Yeah.
Always
you
be
know.
critical of yourself.
Yeah.
But I think I got better at talking to myself or reasoning, like rationalizing, or putting that, you know, to ease a little bit. Probably like this year with footnotes or something. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. There's so many things I would have done differently, but for that moment in time where I was at in my acting journey in 2021 when we filmed this, like, okay.
You did your thing.
Yeah.
That's such a weird way I phrase that question. I did that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It takes some time. Yeah.
yeah, I think it definitely takes some time in just trusting and building confidence in the choices you make as an actor, whether or not. So I think it's also tricky because in film and television, you might do 6 different takes of a scene, each slightly different from each other, but then you don't know which take they're going to choose and how that's going to turn out in the edit. Like, I remember watching a movie the first time and being like, hey, my character is a little bit more antagonistic in that than I thought I played her. Or like, I feel a little bit, I'm way less likable than I thought I was playing that character, or how I imagined it. And like, that wasn't necessarily because I didn't give the takes where I was more likable, quote unquote. It was just, that's the direction that worked best for telling the story, where this character had to be unlikable so the other one could be likable, or whatever it was, right? So just trusting, like, hey, I did the best I could, but they chose the takes of me that they wanted to, you know?
Yeah.
Editing is a wild card. It's scary.
It is. Because,
It
like,
can
you
make
can
or
really
break you.
prime the audience, like, even with the music, right? It's like,
Yes.
is this person like, you can trustworthy or not, right? The
Yeah.
music tells you a little bit sometimes what to think, or the edits can tell you like what they're asking us to focus on in the next scene, like, you know.
Do you listen to music to get ready for the role, or like whatever scene it is?
I've been experimenting with that a little bit more recently.
Yeah.
I didn't used to, but I did a short film a couple of weekends ago where I was supposed to be in a really emotional state, and I was like, you know, when I was listening to XYZ song the other day, that got me emotional. I wonder if it'll trigger anything today. So I tried that on set, and it helped. So sometimes.
You know what's something I just thought of I could do, or like actors could do to get into really emotional zones? How about you borrow from like films, actually, like scenes that got you to react in a certain way, and that way you're removing yourself personally. You're literally just borrowing from characters that you see on screen.
You should
and
try
then
it out.
using
Let me
that.
know how that works. Yeah.
Well, I've tried a version of that with soundtracks. So I'm obsessed. I'm a huge music guy. Like, I listen to soundtracks. Like, that's my morning routine. Like, I listen obsessively. Like, I just listen to soundtracks, and I don't know, just listening to soundtracks alone can get me to react in very like emotional ways. And that's worked for me. But like, you know, that's different for every person.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like
Yeah.
the power of music is very profound.
I agree. I'm definitely, as a dancer especially, I feel like music has played a huge role in my life. So I resonate a lot with movement and music being ways to tap into emotions, for sure. Not for everyone, but yeah.
Yeah. You don't listen to music, right? To
No.
get into
roles. I mean, honestly, he pointed out something to me probably a year and a half ago or something, how important like the music is in a film, and I just didn't realize it. Right? Obviously, it is now in hindsight, but I just didn't realize it. And after I realized it, what helped me realize is, one, music can play a huge role on your day-to-day life, just in your emotions, and then another is like attention to details too, right? Because if you don't pay attention to the music, then the movie can be a completely different thing, like you were saying, right? Yeah, I don't, but no, I don't do what this guy does. This guy will be driving, and I'll get into the car. He's
Put on the
picking me up,
Succession
and
soundtrack,
it's like
bro.
Succession.
Great soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
Also, that intro song is so good for Succession.
Thank you. Oh my God,
There
a
you
fellow
go.
Succession soundtrack
Big
appreciate.
fan of that
yeah.
show.
Yeah, that's a great show.
That the guy who made it, Nicholas Bertel.
Yeah.
He's a great, he's a great music composer. He's the best right now. He's the GOAT.
Game of Thrones as well.
He did Game of Thrones?
Wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
He did Game of Thrones.
think
Nicholas
so.
Bertel did
I
Game
think
of
so.
Thrones?
Yeah, Janice said that. Yeah.
Nah, I would have known about that, bro.
Oh,
I
maybe
could
not.
track
Don't
you
quote me
like
on
every
that.
single
Are
one
you
of his
sure?
projects he
think-
did.
Okay.
Okay, whatever.
Game of Thrones.
I don't know.
Regardless, he's
Yeah.
great.
We'll find
I
out.
think his best score is Moonlight. That's I
Moonlight.
think his best one. Yeah, he
Yeah,
should have won an
music is
Oscar.
a huge part of filmmaking,
Yeah.
oftentimes overlooked.
Yeah. Want to know something crazy about Nicholas Bertel? This is random, but the guy who made La La Land, Damien Chazelle, Nicholas Bertel was a producer for him for a short film he made back in 2011. A short film called Whiplash.
Oh.
A short film
Oh.
called Whiplash that
That's a
got
great
in-
story, Whiplash. Like the whole journey and arc of that film. So cool.
Yeah.
It's critical. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good note to.
You want to
Unless
plug
you
yourself?
wanted to say something.
Or say something?
Yes.
PSA,
Plug
another
yourself,
PSA?
your
Another
social.
PSA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it this one here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please, if you have the time, please go watch our film Footnotes. It's on Amazon, Tubi, and Plex. Also available internationally. It's streaming in India and a bunch of other nations. Yeah,
There you go. Footnotes.
Footnotes.
All right.
Footnotes.
Thank you very much.
Watch it, like it, share it.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Alrighty.
All
Thank
right.
you.